for the more than 7.5 million students across America who receive special education services. Access to a quality education is not only an aspiration, it's a right. However, despite this fact and the federal protections offered in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, which guarantees students a free and appropriate public education, significant disparities in access, quality, and outcomes continue to exist across the country. Today, it's estimated that between 15% of the population, or 1 in 7 of every student, by the National Institute of Health and the Department of Education in public schools today, receive special education services, which makes it one of the most important and pressing issues facing the future of public and quality education today. In today's episode, I'm joined by my friend Mitch Elatkin. He is the Senior Director of Specialized Services for ReGeneration Schools, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to ensuring that every child has access to high-quality college-preparatory education. ReGeneration Schools currently serves a network of students in Chicago, Cincinnati, with a mission of developing values-driven leaders, while also preparing young people to lead fulfilling lives. In his role, Mitch oversees Special Education Section 504 services and related supports across multiple schools. He draws upon over 2 decades of leadership in special education services, including stints with KIPP Public Schools and the Noble Network of Charter Schools. He brings a unique perspective on what schools are doing well and where they're falling short, and what meaningful improvements are needed to improve the quality of education. And Elatkin joined me this week to tell me more about how we can upstart a brighter future in special education for some deserving students. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to talk to you about inclusion in special education. It's great to see you, and happy Wednesday to you, my friend.
Thank you. Happy Wednesday.
Absolutely. So, Mitch, I wanted to start our conversation by asking you a generalized but specific question about the current state of special education across America, where it's meeting the mark and where it's falling short, and where you think innovation still has a place to make sure that every student who requires special education services can still have access to a quality education. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I think Kevin, you kind of finished that thought with exactly what it's all about, is ensuring that all kids have a strong education particularly in special education, is understanding what are the students' needs and how to use that to create programming, create strategy that helps them be successful. I think something that I'm starting to see in the field, which is been really great, is I think people are beginning to exercise their voices in terms of sharing what needs to be true for individuals with disabilities, with their voice being included in the mix. So it's not everyone else telling people with disabilities how to live and how to learn, but including everyone in that process to create a really collaborative plan for the students, for individuals with disabilities within our schools. I think on the other hand, did you have follow up? I'm sorry.
No, keep going. Keep going.
I think on the other side, we have two major challenges to tackle within the field. I think the first is going to be financial sustainability across special education, across all of our school districts. I think the other piece is how do we keep good people in their seats so they can continue to hone in on their craft so they can be stronger for their students with disabilities. And oftentimes, unfortunately, the financial piece impacts the retention piece and how we keep people within their seats within schools. So I think we deal with a world that is desiring more collaboration. They want to use their voice to advocate for individuals with disabilities, but we are still grappling with the financial issues that districts are facing with enrollment and other things that may impact special education funding, as well as making sure that people want to stay in their seats for a few years. Because we also know, and research says that individuals that have a teacher that has been there year over year can have more positive impact on the students.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rich, I know you know all about individual education plans, or IEPs is the most commonly known. And I'm wondering your thoughts on how we can reimagine the individual education plans to make sure that it's tailored specifically. I know IEPs are typically tailored to students, but I'm wondering your thoughts on how we can reimagine IEPs to really make sure that we're maximizing the educational value or potential of every student with special needs. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, I think what first comes to mind as, I've looked at IEP paperwork across multiple states, other than just my current organization. And I think the one thing that is true across all of them is that we have to reduce redundancy in our IEP paperwork. If we've already said it, I understand the reinforcement of this statement, but I think what's really causing special education teachers to feel the burn is that a lot of the paperwork is really, really tedious. If we've already said it once, I'm still struggling to understand why we need to say it multiple times. And I think it creates a very, very long document. So I would say the first strategy is what are the pieces of the IEP that were already said and we don't need to restate it while also preserving the mitigation of legal risk. We don't want our organizations out of compliance. We don't want to have escalations that are legal in nature. So how do we create an IEP document that is straightforward, that is easy to understand by parents? In many cases, I would even say the student. I think it's very important that we engage the student in this process and that our teachers understand it in a way that they can implement it within their classroom. And so I would say that is the first thing that I would love to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mitch, I'm also curious because I know that you've held administration roles in the past before, and I'm curious to go back to something you said earlier about retention of good professionals in the field. Having cerebral palsy myself, I went through the educational system when I had, individual educational assistance and when I didn't. And that makes a big difference, my friend. So I'm curious to ask you about retaining these professionals and what goes into making sure, both on a financial or economic side, but also on the mental health side to make sure that these talented and qualified professionals remain in the field. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I think it is absolutely critical. And I think it was important before the pandemic. I think it's even more so important now. I think the pandemic helped us shine a spotlight on how important mental health needs are, both for our students, but for our staff. And that is something that I took with me in my leadership once we entered the pandemic. So when the pandemic began, I was tasked with determining how special education is supposed to be run when we were completely remote. And so we did that. That was separate. But something that I also took with me is that we have to care about people as humans first. We have to bring humanity back into the mix. So often we are busy with check boxes, other type of items, but do we actually care about the individual and the person? And so it's really important to me that I understand and know my team at a professional level, but also personally, not the minute details, not the secrets, but really, how are you doing? Are you well as a human being? And I think bringing back more humanity into the mix will be able to retain people. I also see many times in exit interviews in past organizations that they have named that how they feel they were treated was a reason why they exited. So it is really important to me that when I walk into schools as a district leader, that my teachers see me as someone that is just going to help them improve as opposed to, an authority figure. So I care about you as a human. I care about the work that you're doing. And so my push really for retention is making sure that we know who our people are as humans and building that trust within two human beings, but also helping them develop so they feel empowered to do the work that they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mitch, I know that you're celebrating over 2 decades in special education and education in general, and you work with students across special education, English language, and learning in general education settings, my friend. So I'm curious, and you've also served in leadership roles both at the school and district level. So tell me, why is this work part of your passion and purpose, my friend? And what first inspired you to get involved in education, buddy?
Yeah, so I have been wanting to be a teacher since I was 7. And I remember very distinctly having my second grade teacher, Mrs. B, being really inspirational for me and really knowing at 7 years old that I wanted to be a teacher. And I carried that through. So in high school, I was president of Future Educators of America. And then I built up other sort of leadership experiences in college and beyond to really anchor in that to be in education. I think what's really, really important to me is advocacy and being an ambassador to individuals with disabilities. Being able to share that we have more to do to be equitable across our schools and across our districts, knowing that equity is a work in progress and that we have to be open to that. More recently, what's kept me going is my dissertation work around inclusive mindsets. So really ensuring that people's mindsets are right. So when they work with individuals with disabilities, when they work with students in general, that they are not causing harm. And back to kind of that mental health is how do we ensure we're not causing harm and that we're helping people thrive and close that achievement gap. And I think what keeps me going is when I'm surrounded by individuals that have that inclusive mindset or that I can help teach them around inclusive mindsets and how to push the work forward. I think what also, keeps me motivated is being with parents that want to do the best they possibly can for their child and working with the school. And I think there's a real magic when you have that family and school balance and relationship that's really collaborative and really pushes the work forward for kids with disabilities.
Yeah, and then to that point, my friend, uh, when we look at inclusion in education, it has a wide and broadening definition for every educational professional who values the word inclusion. In my view, inclusion is the gateway to independence and possibilities, my friend. So I'm curious, as a veteran educational leader, what does the word inclusion mean to you?
Yeah, so inclusion is much bigger than when we are co-teaching. Inclusion is much bigger than a student with an IEP within a general education classroom. Inclusion begins with mindset. Inclusion begins with how we think about how kids learn. Inclusion is about how kids navigate around the school building. Inclusion means that we are considering all situations as we provide plans. So we ensure that every student, regardless of disabilities, has access. So inclusion equals access. So how are we providing access to individuals across the day, at lunch, at arrival, at dismissal, on field trips? And that always means taking that extra step to review strategic plans to make sure it can apply to 100% of our student population, regardless of circumstance. And so for me, inclusion is strategically planning for all students all the time.
Yeah, and mention your opinion because I know that over the course of over 2 decades, the field of special education has seen its fair share of changes, and I'm sure you would agree with that. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on how the industry has evolved as a whole, and your perspective on the most important thing we need to do when it comes to helping students with disabilities unlock their potential. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I think I feel strongly about ensuring that we keep high expectations. I think the Andrews Supreme Court case of 2017 supported that we need to have high expectations for individuals with disabilities. And I've seen that work. What we see across the board is that when we have a high bar for kids, regardless if they have a disability or not, they will rise to that challenge. And rising to that challenge is what's going to ultimately help us close gaps that we need to close. My hope is that we begin to feel less anxiety around lowering the bar or seeing an individual struggle. So my belief is that you might flounder, but we're not going to let you drown. We are going to most certainly help you so you could be successful, but we got to let people grapple with hard things because that's what life is. It's grappling with a lot of hard things. And the greatest and probably one of the most safest place to grapple with hard things is school. When you have a supportive set of individuals around you to do that. And I think that's really what is important within this field is that we have that bar high. More recently, and particularly in the past half a decade, I've really seen the bar lowered. And there's a multitude of reasons behind that. And we can have a full conversation about why some of the bars have lowered. But I also think research has to catch up a little bit within the field. I think we're seeing a lot of different milestones from kids on this side of the pandemic that I think we need to grapple with as a field that hopefully research is working on right now. So kind of a few different points there.
Yeah, and I'm going to follow up by asking you because you mentioned the bar being lowered. Do you think has anything to do with the current societal stance in America surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion? And do you think kids with disabilities get the short end of the stick because of the current societal view of diversity, equity, and inclusion? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, I think as someone who's very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think you're on the right track in thinking that we have to figure out where the pendulum is going to swing. I think it's been going like this very quickly, and I think it's causing some confusion. I think what needs to be true also, though, is that the amount that we're putting on general education teachers when what's most critical is that they are accommodating for individuals with disabilities that have IEPs that have 504 within their classroom, that needs to be first and top priority, in my opinion. I'm also maybe considered biased because I'm the special education leader. But I think there's a lot of extraneous tasks that I think happen within schools that we have to begin to think about removing from teachers' plates so they can really focus on what's important and really drive some of those inclusion and equity points that need to be true to strengthen instruction for individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mitch, I know in your current role with ReGeneration Schools, it's an organization committed to ensuring that every child has access to high quality college preparatory education through academic excellence, my friend. And with your role as the director of specialized services, I'm wondering, how do you take that mission and vision to work with you every day to maximize the potential of every student? Tell me about Regeneration Schools, my friend.
Yes. So we are 9 schools across 2 cities. So we have 6 schools in Chicago and we have 3 schools in Cincinnati. We also are part of the Chicago International Charter Schools in Chicago. So one organization, 2 separate locations. We have a little under 400 students with IEPs and 504 plans across our 9 schools. And that is growing due to stronger child find procedures. And I think what I've always loved most about Regeneration Schools is, similar to what I shared earlier, is that it sets a high bar for kids and families for achievement. But not at the sake of providing the supports and services when they need it. And so I have been really drawn to the mission of, yes, we will provide you a high quality college preparatory education. We are going to have you grapple and struggle with some of these high level thinking skills, but we are going to support you in an environment that is caring, cares about you as a human being. We care about your family, and we will provide the supports and services necessary. We have social workers across our campuses to deal with the mental health issues, to deal with the social emotional issues and challenges that have been coming up. And so not only do we have, academic and behaviorally rigorous expectations for kids, but we also support them along the way.
Yeah, and Rich, I'm curious in your role specifically, the whole concept of building connections and building relationships and authentic human connection between families, teachers, and administrators and students alike is very important. So, talk to me about your perspective on building relationships and authentically connecting with humans, because I know it's a big part of what you do every day.
Yeah. Um, that is a part of my work that I love the most. I think one of the most important ways to build relationships is really around active listening and letting people share their own truth. And so when there's a family that is upset or there's a parent that's upset, allowing them to share their truth, make recommendations on what things seems to be what they want to be true, sharing in our truth and coming to a happy medium. And I think that's true with staff too, is what does staff want? What do teachers want for their students? How can what I'm providing support that? And where do we have to come to a happy medium? As a leader, there are 2 things that always remain true to me. One is that we have to be comfortable with the words "I don't know." I might have a doctorate in special education, but that doesn't mean that I know every little thing about special education from start to finish. I have to look things up too. So embracing "I don't know" creates a vulnerability that allows people to be more true, and they don't feel like they have to create a persona because I'm a leader. They could look at me and be like, Mitch, I just don't know that. And I embrace that. I thank them for not knowing. So then we can learn together. And so that's another way I build trust. The other part, at the end of every meeting, some people love it, some people don't. I ensure that we give shout outs to each other. We always end our meetings positively because the work is hard. And so how do we celebrate ourselves in moments where we might feel like there's nothing to celebrate.
Yeah, and Mitch, I'm curious for you, what's the biggest lesson your students have taught you about the power of character, resilience, and always showing up in life? What do you want to share with me in that respect, my friend?
Always believe in their dreams, always believe in what they want to be true for their lives. And how do we set up the environment and the circumstances so what they want to be true for their lives can be a reality? And I think, I want to make sure that individuals around those students also are embracing that they can do anything. And so how do they, when they come to a plan, if they come to me and they want to be a lawyer, what needs to be true about their education, their transition planning, so they can get there? We also know kids change their plans a lot. But I think as adults, us listening to them and working with them to create transition programming that supports their goals and their wishes is really important.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was very excited to ask you about today was the importance of giving students with disabilities access to employment opportunities. Now, I know that ReGeneration Schools prepares kids for college in some respects, but I'm also curious to ask you about the importance of creating employment equity and inclusion for students with disabilities, and your thoughts there, my friend.
Yeah, I think, you know, this is a tough question. So as I think about, we're a K-8 system, and so my world zooming into transition is not the same as when I had high school students. But that being said, transition planning is still critically important, even at the middle
Mm-hmm.
school level, right? Because we want to engage students in that transition part. I also think is how can we work better with state and community agencies that are going to be able to provide employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities. And, that could be a workforce commission, that could be whomever, but who do we need to partner with to create more employment equity?
Yeah, absolutely. And, when we talk about districts as a whole, when we talk about budgeting and making sure we balance the budget, oftentimes, because I've been a recipient of this myself. Oftentimes, when we have to balance budgets in school districts, we have to cut somewhere. And oftentimes, special education, sadly, is one of the first places district leaders look to save money. So, how do you? I'm wondering your message to district leaders when it comes to needing knowing they have to balance budgets, but also making sure that they preserve quality education for students with special needs. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, I think that is a very real question that I think districts grapple with every budget year. Is that if they have to make cuts, where do those cuts happen and why? I think what needs to be true is that if we are not closing special education gaps, whether that be behaviorally, whether that be academically, whether that even be with attendance, is is that in their best interest to cut the special education positions? Now, that being said, what I said is also easier said than done when you have a dollar amount that you can't seem to hit when you get that budget line item. That being said, does the data support that position is necessary? And so sometimes just using a random example, we'll see an abundance of paraprofessionals and the need won't match how the students are performing. And so there's some natural cuts that could happen because the student has data to suggest that they are independent and don't need that paraprofessional support. So I think there are two pieces here is what needs to be true to hit the budget line items, but more importantly, what does our data say about where some easier cuts could happen that still preserve the special education programming and instruction?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about facing barriers. Often, students with disabilities are asked to be resilient, and some disabilities aren't physical or mental or emotional. They're rooted in sort of assumptions and thinking about how to generally serve students with disabilities. So I'm curious to go on to talk how we get educators and educational leaders and teachers and parents to look beyond the assumptions that they go in with to better service students with disabilities and really focus on their potential. So how do we go from assumptions to making sure that we have an inclusive voice and allowing students with disabilities to maximize their potential?
I think I think we have to embrace more vulnerability in the educational world. As we probably both know, neurodiversity is becoming more and more diverse as we're learning more and more. And I say that because I think we could all benefit, regardless if we have a diagnosed disability or not, from an IEP. I think everyone in the world could benefit from an IEP because why? There's always is something that we are struggling with or may need an accommodation or support with. And it's the intensity that can be changed within those documents. So how do we help people express what they struggle with so more people can be vulnerable and share their truth around, um, around their struggles? And so I know that's not the best answer, but I do believe if we become more open and accepting that we all deal with struggles, we can then have a different layer of inclusivity to be able to work from.
Yeah, and Mitch, I'm curious because I know regeneration schools, their tagline, or they often talk about building leaders for a better tomorrow. So I'm curious, what does that phrase mean to you personally, and how do you mentor or how do you influence students with that sort of saying, guiding the work that you do each and every day? What does that saying mean to you, my friend?
Yeah. So that means that we are going to work and provide you a rigorous college prep program so that you can have access to college if that's the pathway you want to choose. However, if the pathway you want to choose is something different that satisfies you as an individual that meets your interests and learning needs, you will have that rigorous education to be able to lean on as you go into high school. Part of what we're working with our kids on is we want them to be able to have access to highly selective enrollment schools within Chicago and Cincinnati. And if we can provide them and they can meet that bar, we want them to do so, as we know it may provide more opportunity in their future.
Yeah, and Mitch, I've got two questions left for you. And the first of the two questions is this, my friend. I'm curious because I know for me, I'm a hands-on learner. So if you put a bunch of words on a piece of paper, it's hard for me to consume that. But I'm a hands-on learner, and I know that the rise of vocational education is something that students with and without disabilities are adopting more. So I'm curious to ask you, from your perspective, running special education services for regeneration schools, the importance of vocational education and giving students additional options for the next phase of life. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, I think it goes back a little bit to what I shared before, is that we're going to provide you the education that is needed for you to potentially have college as an option, but it will allow you to explore vocational options as well. I think, if I had a high school program as well, I would want to embed those vocational programs and that vocational component. Now, what that also means is that as we're helping our students choose a high school, and many of them want to take the selective enrollment route, as that is important to them. There are students that are going to pick a more vocational high school, and we can help them with those choices and really collaborate with families around vocational education. I think you are right, though. I think we are seeing more and more individuals wanting to look at a vocational option. I think that's due to the cost of higher education going up and it becoming financially very challenging. They're seeing people in student loan debt, and we could talk about all those reasons, but I do think our preparation to allow them to have those vocational choices is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mitch, my final question for you this afternoon has to do with your own personal and professional legacy as an educator and as a person, my friend. How do you want that to be defined?
That is a great question, and I think it's a question that I grapple with a lot, particularly as I'm entering the second half of my career. To put it simply, um, I always want my voice to be the little birdie on your shoulder, that's reminding you to make sure to think about all students, and particularly students with disabilities. Are the plans equitable? And I always want my legacy to be that we don't forget about any kids and that our plans are inclusive of all students and all their needs, regardless of severity of disability, regardless of type of disability, and regardless of circumstance. And I really want that to be a big part of my legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Mitch, tell me if people want to get connected with you or Regeneration Schools, what's the best way they can do that, my friend?
Sure. So you're welcome to find me on LinkedIn. I have a public profile, so you could find me. We can connect there. Or if you go to regenerationschools.org, you'll be connected with our website, see more about our schools, more about our data, and our day-to-day operations.
Absolutely. Well, Mitch, as someone who's passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion and education myself, I really appreciated this conversation about how we advance special education forward. I want to thank you for the good work that you're doing. I want to encourage you to continue the good fight, my friend, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to engage in conversation with you, my friend. It's most appreciated.
I appreciate my time with you as well, Kevin. Thank you.